a lot of people start requesting for me to check out this story. These teens have a terrifying secret.
The story of how the friendship of three teenage girls turned into a terrifying secret will blow your mind. These girls never thought anyone would ever find out what they did. But one summer night changed everything. What happened wasn't just shocking. It was something no one could have imagined. Their actions would leave their families in disbelief and an entire town on edge. This isn't just another teenage drama. It is a chilling story of trust, fear, and the lengths people will go to hide the truth. What exactly was their secret, and how was it exposed? Join us in this video as we reveal the terrifying details. The terrifying secret that shook a town. When 16-year-old Skyler Neese slipped out of her West Virginia home just after midnight on July 6, 2012, her parents had no idea it would be the last time they saw her alive. At first, her two best friends, Rachel Schoaf and Sheila Eddy, seemed devastated, posting on social media about their fears and hopes that Skyler would be found. The community rallied behind them, believing their heartbreak was genuine. But the truth was far darker than anyone imagined. Behind the tweets and worried smiles, Rachel and Sheila were hiding a secret, one that would horrify the entire town. Investigators later learned the girls had been planning Skyler's death for months, and their motive was as cold as it was senseless. "We just didn't like her," Rachel admitted to police. Skyler's parents said the three girls used to be inseparable, spending nearly every day together. But in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, cracks in their friendship began to show. Skyler's tweets painted a picture of a girl who felt betrayed. On July 4th, just 2 days before her assassination, she wrote, "It really doesn't take much to piss me off." And later, "Sick of being at home. Thanks, friends. Love hanging out with you all too." The day before she died, she added, "You doing say like that is why I can never completely trust you." According to Sheila, the night Skyler went missing, the three had been driving around getting high. She claimed they dropped Skyler off at the end of her street so she could sneak back into her apartment. But that story quickly began to fall apart. Surveillance footage showed Skyler climbing into a car at 12:30 a.m., not 11 p.m. as the girls first claimed. Cell phone records, convenience store video footage punched even more holes in their story. The FBI soon got involved, and suspicion began to grow, not just among investigators, but in the community itself. Some still defended Rachel and Sheila, unable to believe two bubbly teenage girls could be capable of anything so cruel. Others were beginning to think the unthinkable. The truth finally came out on January 3, 2013, when Rachel suffered a breakdown under relentless questioning. She confessed that she and Sheila had lured Skyler out, driven her to a remote spot, and stabbed her to death. The reason? Chilling in its simplicity: we just didn't like her. This confession would shatter the image of the girls everyone thought they knew and reveal just how far they'd gone to keep their deadly secret hidden. But how did the truth of this terrifying secret come out? Keep watching to find out. The chilling confession and its aftermath. When Rachel Schoaf finally broke down and confessed in January 2013, even seasoned investigators weren't sure whether to believe her. Judge Perry Jo DeChristopher, then an assistant prosecutor, explained that confessions between co-conspirators aren't always reliable. They have to be backed up by hard evidence. But Schoaf's account came with details only the assassins could know. She led authorities to a remote wooded area just over the Pennsylvania state line, 20 miles from Star City, West Virginia. There, they found Skyler Neese's remains. Schoaf revealed the disturbing plan she and Sheila Eddy had plotted. Pick Skyler up at night, drive to a secluded spot under the pretense of smoking marijuana, count to 3, and then stab her. Skyler had been attacked more than 50 times. Investigators tried to get Eddie to incriminate herself, even sending Shof in with a wire. But Shelia wouldn't crack. A search warrant on Eddie's home turned up her phone, computer, knives, and most damning of all, a Toyota Camry with Skyler's blood in the trunk. On May 1, 2013, Shelia Eddy was arrested in a restaurant parking lot. Both girls were charged as adults with assassination. Eddie eventually pleaded guilty to a first-degree charge and received a life sentence in January 2014. Shoaf, who cooperated, pleaded guilty to a second-degree charge the following month and was sentenced to 30 years. Only Shoaf apologized to Skyler's parents in court. Eddie never expressed remorse. "Eddie's not sorry," Skyler's father said. "You don't apologize for murdering somebody in cold blood because she meant to do it." Even years later, the pain hasn't eased. Shoaf was denied parole last year. Skyler's family, her friends, and the community remain haunted by what happened. As one former school guidance counselor put it, "Nobody wins. Skyler isn't around, the two girls are in jail."
But despite all of that, Morgantown is also known for something absolutely terrible, and that is the story of Skyler Neese.
The parents are living through this, and Morgantown is still ripped apart. But before this gruesome event, who was Skyler Neese, and how would she be remembered by her loved ones? Let's find out. The girl everyone loved. Before her name became the center of a heartbreaking crime, Skyler Neese was just a bright, happy 16-year-old living in Morgantown, West Virginia. A straight-A student and part-time Wendy's employee, she was well-liked by classmates, co-workers, and neighbors. The only child of Mary and Dave Neese, she was adored beyond measure, especially by her father, Dave, a tough, burly man who happily admitted to spoiling his daughter rotten. Skyler was full of life, fiercely loyal to her friends, and had a sense of humor that could light up a room. Her father loved to tell stories about her, but one memory always made him laugh the most. When Skyler was little, she invited him to one of her famous tea parties. Dutiful as ever, Dave squeezed himself into a tiny pink chair, facing Skyler in her ballerina tutu. She beamed as she handed him a small plastic teacup, already filled with tea. Taking a sip, Dave told her it was the best tea he'd ever tasted. Skyler blushed with pride. That night, when Mary got home, Dave proudly recounted how realistic this tea party had been. This time, Skyler had even added water. Mary froze. "Dave, Skyler's not tall enough to reach the faucet. Where do you think she got the water?" The truth hit him instantly. Skyler had been scooping water from the toilet to fill the cups. The memory still made him laugh, not because of the water, but because it perfectly captured Skyler's playful spirit. She was clever, funny, and full of surprises, the kind of girl whose light touched everyone around her. And that is how she will be remembered forever. Aside from the assassination of Skyler Neese by her best friends, let's see the other teenagers who also had terrifying secrets to share. The story of Shanda Sharer, a night that turned into horror. In January 1992, the quiet town of Madison, Indiana, became the setting for one of the most shocking crimes in U.S. history. 12-year-old Shanda Sharer was tortured and burned to death by 4 teenage girls, none older than 17. The sheer brutality, coupled with the assassins' ages, drew international attention and left the nation stunned. On the night of January 10th, 15-year-olds Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence rode with 17-year-old Melinda Tackett to the home of 16-year-old Melinda Loveless in New Albany. Rippey and Lawrence had never met Loveless before, but Tackett already knew there was a deadly plan. Loveless, seething with jealousy, accused Shanda of being a copycat and stealing her girlfriend. She showed the girls a knife, saying she would use it to scare Shanda. The group drove to Jeffersonville, where Shanda stayed with her father on weekends. After stopping at a McDonald's for directions, Rippy and Lawrence went to Shanda's door, pretending to be friends of another girl, Amanda Hevron. They told Shanda they wanted to take her to see Amanda at the so-called Witch's Castle, a crumbling stone house on a lonely hill above the Ohio River. Shanda was hesitant. She had a party to attend and told them to come back after midnight. Loveless was frustrated but agreed to wait. The girls crossed the river to Louisville, attending a punk rock show at Audubon Skate Park. Rippy and Lawrence quickly grew bored and left the venue to fool around with boys in Tackett's car. When the concert ended, the four girls headed back to Shanda. This time, Loveless made her intentions clear. She couldn't wait to assassinate her. She claimed she only wanted to scare Shanda with the knife. But the tension in the car told a different story. At 12:30 a.m., they pulled up to Shanda's house again. Lawrence refused to go to the door, so Tackett and Rippy went instead, while Loveless hid in the back seat under a blanket, clutching the knife that would mark the beginning of a night of unimaginable terror. Shanda Sharer's father and stepmother had gone to bed, unaware of the nightmare that was about to unfold. Hope Rippy convinced Shanda that Amanda Hevron was still waiting at the witch's castle. Though hesitant, Shanda changed clothes and climbed into the car. Almost immediately, Melinda Loveless leapt from the back seat, pressing a knife to Shanda's throat and grilling her about her relationship with Amanda. They drove toward the witch's castle, a crumbling stone ruin Loveless used to terrify Shanda with ghost stories. Inside, they tied her arms and legs, taunted her about her looks, and stole her rings. Rippy even took Shanda's Mickey Mouse watch, dancing to its tune, while Tackett claimed the place was filled with human remains and that Shanda's would be next. To scare her further, Tackett lit a shirt on fire before they abruptly left. Shanda begged them to take her home, but the girls became lost, stopping twice at gas stations. Wrapped in a blanket, Shanda was hidden from public view while Lawrence and Rippy chatted with boys, never mentioning the abduction. Eventually, Tackett led them to an abandoned building deep in the woods near her home. There, Loveless forced Shanda to strip to her underwear before beating her, slamming her face into her knee and attempting to slit her throat. When the knife proved too dull, Rippy helped hold Shanda down as Loveless and Tackett stabbed her repeatedly, then strangled her with a rope until she seemed lifeless. They stuffed her into the trunk and drove to Tackett's house to clean up. But the horror wasn't over. Shanda's muffled screams drew Tackett back outside, where she stabbed her again. Hours later, during a drive through the countryside, they opened the trunk to find Shanda still alive, bloodied, eyes rolled back, unable to speak. Tackett savagely beat her with a tire iron, claiming she felt her skull cave in, then sexually assaulted her with it. By daybreak, they returned to Tackett's home, waking the others. Rippy asked about Shanda, and Tackett laughed while describing the torture. Later, they drove to a burn pile to dispose of her. Rippy sprayed Shanda with Windex and sneered, "You're not looking so hot now, are you?" It was cruelty without limits, and Shanda's final moments were still yet to come. So what happened next? Stay tuned to find out. The final act of cruelty. Just after sunrise, the girls stopped at a gas station near Madison Consolidated High School. They filled the car and bought a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi, only to pour out the soda and refill it with gasoline. Then they drove to Lemon Road, a remote gravel path north of Madison. Lawrence stayed in the car, while Tackett and Rippy carried Shanda, still clinging to life, wrapped in a blanket, into a nearby field. Rippy doused her with gasoline and set her on fire. But Loveless wasn't convinced she was dead. Minutes later, they returned to pour the rest of the gasoline over her body, ensuring no chance of survival. By 9:30 a.m., the girls were sitting in a McDonald's booth, eating breakfast and laughing about how Shanda's charred body looked like one of the sausages on their plates. Lawrence casually phoned a friend to brag about the assassination. Soon after, Tackett dropped Lawrence and Rippey at home before returning with Loveless to her own house. Later that day, Loveless confided in Amanda Heverin, the very girl at the center of her jealousy, and told her they had assassinated Shanda. When Heverin seemed skeptical, Loveless and Tackett took her to see the evidence for herself. Along with another friend, Crystal Wathen, they opened the trunk of Tackett's car, revealing bloody handprints and Shanda's socks. Heverin was horrified. She demanded to be taken home. Before she left, Loveless kissed her, told her she loved her, and begged her not to tell anyone. Shaken, Heverin promised to keep quiet, but the truth would soon be impossible to hide. So how did the world finally get to learn about this terrifying secret? Let's find out. The morning the truth began to unravel. On the cold morning of January 11th, 1992, brothers Don and Ralph Foley were driving toward Jefferson Proving Ground for a hunting trip when something unusual caught their eye on the side of the road. At first, they assumed it was a discarded mannequin, but when they stepped out for a closer look, they were met with a horrific reality: the charred remains of a child. It was 10:55 a.m. when they called the police, who instructed them to return to the body until help arrived. State Trooper David Cam, Sheriff Buck Shipley, and a team of detectives soon descended on the scene, gathering forensic evidence. From the start, investigators suspected the assassination might be tied to a substance deal gone wrong, and even believed the perpetrator wasn't from the area. But there was something deeply unsettling about how the body had been left. It had been deliberately posed in a suggestive position, an unmistakable sign of intentional humiliation. Her face and hands had been burned, likely to prevent identification. She was found in what's known as a pugilistic stance, arms outstretched with clenched fists, a tragic result of dying by fire. Meanwhile, that same morning, Sharer's father, Stephen, realized his daughter was missing. After calling neighbors and friends with no luck, he phoned his ex-wife at 1:45 p.m., and together they went to the Clark County Sheriff's Office to file a missing person report. Later that night, at 8:20 p.m., two girls, Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence, arrived at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office with their parents. Their statements were chaotic and rambling, but one thing was clear: they knew the victim, naming her as Shanda, and they implicated two other girls. They also provided a rough outline of what had happened the night before. With this new information, authorities linked the burned body to Sharer's missing person report. Dental records quickly confirmed her identity, and by January 12th, Melinda Loveless and Lori Tackett were arrested. Much of the evidence came from Lawrence and Rippey's confessions. The prosecution wasted no time announcing that both Loveless and Tackett would be tried as adults. Eventually, all four girls faced adult charges. To avoid the death penalty, each accepted a plea deal. Sentences were harsh. Tackett and Loveless each received 60 years. Tackett served nearly 26 years before her release on January 11, 2018, and completed a year of parole. Loveless was freed on September 5, 2019, after more than 26 years, and now serves parole in Kentucky. Rippey received 60 years with 10 suspended, later reduced to 35. She was paroled in 2006 after 14 years. Lawrence, who cooperated, pleaded guilty to criminal confinement and served 9 years, gaining release in 2000. Loveless later fought to overturn her sentence, claiming she'd been mentally impaired by childhood mistreatment and poorly represented by her lawyer. She also argued that, at 16, she couldn't legally enter a plea deal without parental consent, something never obtained. But in 2008, Judge Ted Todd rejected her appeal, and subsequent challenges in higher courts failed. From one crime to another. Keep watching as we reveal more teenagers who emerged with terrifying secrets. The teen who snapped over an iPad. In Norfolk, Virginia, a shocking confession came from a boy no one suspected. 16-year-old Vincent Parker told police that the grisly scene he'd discovered at home was no accident. He had assassinated both of his parents himself.
To stabbing his own parents to death. He faced a judge this morning.
Vincent Parker is being tried as an adult. He was in shackles and handcuffs in court and had no real emotion when he pleaded guilty.
The reason? They had taken away his iPad. The attack began as his mother stepped out of the bathroom. Without warning, Vincent sprayed her with pepper spray and then struck her repeatedly in the head until she collapsed and died. When his father returned home, Vincent used a heavy tool to bludgeon him, leaving him with severe injuries before delivering the final blows that ended his life. Initially, Vincent claimed he'd found them dead, but within days, investigators began to suspect otherwise. Under questioning, he admitted the truth. From one dark night to the next, what secret was buried? Stay tuned to find out. The final hours of Faith Hedgepeth. On September 7, 2012, tragedy struck the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Faith Hedgepeth, a vibrant 19-year-old junior with dreams of joining the Alpha Pi Omega sorority, was found brutally assassinated in her off-campus apartment. The night before began like any other for Faith. At 5:45 p.m. on September 6th, she attended a rush event for Alpha Pi Omega, a historically Native American sorority. By 7:15, she told friends she needed to leave to work on a paper about the history of her tribe. Later, she met her friend and roommate, Karina Rosario, at the Davis Library to study. Between 8:30 and 9 p.m., Faith texted her father, sharing her excitement about possibly joining the sorority. At 11:30 p.m., the two returned to their apartment briefly before heading out again, this time to The Thrill, a downtown Chapel Hill nightclub known for letting in underage patrons to dance. Security footage captured them arriving around 12:40 a.m. and leaving at 2:06 a.m., the last time Faith was seen alive on camera. By 3 a.m., they were back at their apartment. A downstairs neighbor later reported hearing 3 loud thumps, like furniture being knocked over or something heavy hitting the floor. Around this same time, Faith's Facebook page was accessed. At 3:40 a.m., a strange text was sent from Faith's phone to Brandon Edwards, Rosario's ex-boyfriend. "Hey, B, can you come over here, please? Rosario needs you more. You know? Please, let her know you care." Just 3 minutes later, another single-word text, "than," was sent, possibly correcting the "aha" in the first message. It would be the last known activity from Faith's phone. Rosario also attempted to call Edwards, but got no answer. Then tried reaching out to Jordan McCrary, a UNC soccer player she knew. At 4:25 a.m., she left the apartment, leaving the door unlocked, and got into McCrary's car. He drove her to another friend's place on West Longview Street. Rosario stayed there until around 10:30 a.m., when she began trying to get a ride back home. After failing to reach Faith, she called another friend, Marisol Rangel, who agreed to drive her. When they arrived at the apartment just before 11 a.m., they called out for Faith. There was no answer. Inside her bedroom, they were met with a horrifying sight. Faith's body lay partially nude, wrapped in a quilt, her blood staining the fabric. The scene was violent and unmistakably deliberate. They dialed 911 immediately, launching an investigation into one of Chapel Hill's most haunting, unsolved assassinations. So who was responsible for the assassination of Faith? Let's find out. The break in a decade-long mystery. From the very start, investigators kept a tight lid on the details of Faith Hedgepeth's assassination, an unusual move for Chapel Hill police. A court order sealed the case records, and the public knew only that police were working quietly but intensely behind the scenes. At the crime scene, detectives recovered semen and developed a male DNA profile. The autopsy revealed Faith had died from blunt force trauma to the head, likely inflicted by an empty rum bottle found in her apartment. The DNA collected matched male genetic material discovered elsewhere inside. Early suspicion fell on a man named Jones, whose history of domestic violence and disturbing behavior made him a strong person of interest. The night before Faith's assassination, around 6 p.m., Jones had texted someone asking for forgiveness for what I am about to do. A message he also posted publicly on Twitter. 3 days later, he updated his Facebook cover photo with a chilling plea. "Dear Lord, forgive me for all of my sins and the sins I may commit today. Protect me from the girls who don't deserve me and the ones who wish me dead today." Police requested a DNA sample from Jones. After initial resistance, he complied, and the results ruled him out. His genetic profile did not match the one from the apartment. Investigators went on to test DNA from Brandon Edwards and several other men known to have been at the Thrill nightclub that night. None matched. Desperate for leads, the UNC Board of Trustees, local Crime Stoppers, the Halawa Saponi tribe, and the apartment complex pooled together a $29,000 reward, later boosted by an additional $10,000 from Governor Bev Perdue's office. Police hoped this incentive would bring the assassin to light, much like the $25,000 reward that had solved the 2008 assassination of UNC student body president Eve Carson. Over time, investigators released select pieces of evidence, including Rosario's frantic 911 call and a computer-generated image created from the DNA profile. Chief Chris Blue assured the public, "This is not a cold case. It has been and remains an active investigation." That assurance proved true nearly a decade later. On September 16, 2021, police arrested 28-year-old Miguel Salguero Olivares of Durham, charging him with first-degree assassination. He had never been considered a suspect until his DNA was collected after a recent drunk driving arrest in Wake County. That sample matched the genetic profile from the crime scene, as well as a palm print on the assassination weapon. Even then, police urged patience, warning the community that this story will take time to completely unfold. And it has. In November 2024, prosecutors escalated the case, adding charges of first-degree burglary, first-degree rape, and first-degree offense. After 12 long years, the answers to what happened to Faith were finally beginning to surface, but the full truth was still coming into focus. A decade of silence was shattered. But what darkness waited in this next case? Stay tuned for more. The Whispering Cliffs Murder. On September 22, 2006, the quiet town of Pocatello, Idaho became the scene of one of the most disturbing thrill assassinations in American high school history. That night, 16-year-old Cassie Jo Stoddard was house-sitting for her aunt and uncle, Allison and Frank Contreras, at their home on Whispering Cliffs Drive. The couple had gone out of town, leaving Cassie in charge of their pets for the weekend. Her evening began innocently enough. Around 6 p.m., her boyfriend, Matt Beckham, came over to keep her company. Not long after, two classmates, Brian Draper and Torrey Adamczyk, arrived, supposedly just to hang out. Cassie gave them a tour of the house, including the basement, before the four settled into the living room to watch Kill Bill, Volume 2. But Draper and Adamczyk left before the movie ended, claiming they wanted to catch another film at the theater. What Cassie didn't know was that before leaving, Draper had quietly unlocked the basement door. Minutes later, the two boys returned, parking down the street and suiting up in dark clothing, gloves, and eerie white-painted masks. Entering through the basement, they tried to lure Cassie and Matt downstairs by making strange noises. When that failed, they cut the power at the circuit breaker, hoping curiosity would draw them down. Cassie grew uneasy. One of the Contreras' dogs kept staring toward the basement stairs, barking and growling intermittently. Matt noticed her discomfort and called his mother to ask if he could stay the night to reassure her. His mother refused, but offered to let Cassie stay at their house instead. Dutiful and determined to care for the pets she'd been entrusted with, Cassie declined. At around 10:30 p.m., Matt's mother arrived to pick him up, leaving Cassie alone. From their hiding spot in the basement, Draper and Adamczyk heard him leave. They cut the power again and waited. When Cassie still didn't come downstairs, they climbed the stairs, Draper carrying a dagger-like weapon, and Adamczyk armed with a hunting knife purchased from a pawn shop. To terrify her, Draper slammed a closet door. Cassie, lying on the living room couch, had no time to react before the pair launched their attack. They stabbed her approximately 30 times, 12 of the wounds deemed potentially fatal.
Just want to go ahead and just get you briefly caught up to speed there. Chapel Hill police making that announcement just moments ago that they have made an arrest in the murder of 19-year-old UNC student Faith Hedgepeth.
When investigators began piecing the crime together, the true horror emerged. Police discovered videotapes made by Draper and Adamczyk before the assassination, casually detailing their plan to assassinate Cassie and even discussing targeting other classmates. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a cold, calculated act of violence carried out for the thrill. What happened next? Keep watching to find out more. From suspicions to a chilling confession. At first, detectives looked closely at the boyfriend of Stoddart's mother after his fingerprints were found on the basement circuit breaker where the lights had been tampered with before the assassination. But his story checked out. He had done electrical work there months earlier, something the Contreras family confirmed. The focus then shifted to Stoddart's boyfriend, Matt Beckham, the last person known to have seen her alive. He told police the lights were flickering while he was at the house, and his mother said she heard Stoddart's voice as he left. Beckham passed a polygraph test, and with his alibi confirmed, attention turned to two other teens, Brian Draper and Torrey Adamczyk. The pair claimed they'd gone to see the horror movie Pulse, but couldn't remember a single scene. Pressed further, they changed their story, saying they had been breaking into cars instead. Eventually, Draper confessed, but minimized his role. Over multiple interrogations, each teen blamed the other. Draper later admitted he stabbed Stoddart after Adamczyk told him to make sure she is dead, and he led police to a remote canyon where they had burned and buried their weapons, clothes, and even a VHS tape detailing their plan. Both Draper and Adamczyk were convicted of first-degree charge and sentenced to life in prison without parole. So what do you think about these terrifying secrets? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.